I wanted to, again, not take a lot of your time, but I will go right into introducing our guests. So Christina Fuda, who is the Ontario Shores Mental Health First Aid Coordinator, and Angelique Benois, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, you got it.
And who brings 2 decades of nursing experience to this forum today. So we're really, really pleased that you both could find the time to join us, and we really look forward to hearing rather what you guys have to say. So just a little bit of background briefly on these 2 wonderful ladies. So Christina, as I mentioned, is our first aid mental health coordinator at Ontario Shores, and she has been with us for over 5 years, and in her time has had the opportunity to work with over 6,000 people across the province, educating them in mental health first aid. And some of those include OPG and the City of Toronto, as well as the Beer Store, who's a close friend of the Foundation's as well, Toronto Pearson, and quite a few others. So that's fantastic. She holds a master's degree in developmental neuroscience and as well as a bachelor's in psychology. So thank you, Christina, for joining us. And Angelique, mentioned, has 20 years rather of nursing experience. She holds a degree in psychology as well as a master's of science in nursing, and has completed her degree in nursing practitioner, or as a nurse practitioner rather, specializing in mental health. So, and just a special note that Angelique in 2017 received a Worldwide Leader Award in Healthcare for Nursing, and from the International Nursing Association for her contribution to this profession. So welcome, Angelique, and to both of you. I'm going to turn it over to you guys to kick things off.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So I'm starting off first. So welcome, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen here. I have a PowerPoint to share with everyone. So let me just pull this up. And can everyone see this?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through for about 15 minutes. My presentation is going to be really about how to recognize when someone is healthy or unhealthy during this pandemic, and either still in quarantine or when we actually return to work. So that's really going to be what I'm covering. Now, I'm an actual employee of Ontario Shores, so I'm a full-time employee there, and as Honor already gave a little bit of an introduction, is my whole job is basically to get out there and train people, whether it's in this type of training, mental health first aid, or all sorts of other different literacy training. And so I am an employee of the hospital, and we are a full mental health facility. For anybody that doesn't know too much about us, there's only 4 standalone mental health hospitals in the entire province of Ontario, and Ontario Shores is one of them. I'll pass it over to Angelique if there's anything else that you would like to say for your introduction.
Sure. No, I think really there for anybody who kind of wants to know a little bit more in regards to clinical background, but I just wanted to just share in regards to my contribution in regards to the self-care, what I'm going to be offering today comes from a place in regards to what my business really stands for. And it's 3 things in regards to the whole acronym for nurturing our well-being is now. So there's really no room for procrastination when it comes to self-care. It's something that you need to do. Even if it's small, you need to kind of act now. Also in regards to, I put the hour in there because I really truly believe in regards to the fact that it's our responsibility. And so when you do something that's well for yourself, for your mental health and emotional well-being, it doesn't only stay with you, it ripples out to your families, your co-workers, to your communities, and globally. We're seeing now that what happens one place, it has an impact on other places, whether positive or negative. And then the third premise is that we're very complex beings. And so our self-care needs to kind of reflect that, and it needs to evolve with us. So I'm hoping that as I go through some strategies later, that you feel that. Okay.
Great. Thanks, Angelique. So I'm going to just start to walk you through, before we get to all of Angelique's wonderful self-care techniques that we can apply right now, and before I get into teaching people how to recognize when somebody actually needs assistance and needs help, I think we should recognize how common mental illnesses actually are in our workplaces. So pre-quarantine, pre-pandemic, 1 in 5 Canadians will suffer from a mental health problem within the next year. Is 21% of the working population right now is experiencing mental health problems that affect their productivity. And the next slide, I'm going to show you some post-pandemic statistics that we have on people's mental health. Is depression, this is not just a Canadian statistics that depression is a leading global cause of disability. And unfortunately, it accounts for more than 800,000 suicides every single year. So mental health is a topic that we definitely can't ignore. This is something that affects us all. Now, during COVID, there's been some research that has come out. I was really hoping to find Morneau Chappelle's latest mental health index. They've been trying to release them every month, but I do have the results from their index that was published on April 2nd. So what we're seeing since the pandemic has come out is significant decreases in people's overall mental health. So the index score is usually around 75 and it dropped to 63. This low score is actually unprecedented. Generally we only see this in employees who've experienced major life disruptions, major mental health risks. And so actually Angelique's even going to take us more in her part into trauma, is how traumatizing this experience has been in some ways for all of us, and it's all affecting our mental health. Now, the largest negative score decreases were in terms of anxiety, optimism, helplessness, and isolation. Other results that came from this is 81% of respondents are actually saying that COVID-19 is having negative impacts on their mental health. So 81% of us are feeling that this is affected. Now, on a positive, only about 50% of us state that while yes, they are having mental health concerns, they still feel that they are capable to cope with it. But 32% are reporting feeling very negative, significant impacts on their mental health. A study from the US found some additional results in that social isolation, loneliness is worse in older adults and teenagers, and that actually the job loss that many are experiencing is leading to higher risk of substance use and suicide. And there was a very interesting correlation that as the unemployment rate increases, so does the suicide rate. They tend to be very strongly correlated together. And we're also seeing burnout from a lot of our frontline healthcare workers, first responders, and people in those roles. So that's what it looks like right now. So before we get into recognizing specific things, I just want to talk a little bit about what is mental health versus a mental illness. So mental health is actually a positive. It is a state of well-being in which we can cope with the normal stresses of life, where we can work, we can contribute to society. So mental health is a good thing. It means like that 50% that said, yes, we're feeling our mental health decline a little, but can still cope. We can still work. We can still give back to our families, our communities. It's an illness when it starts to cause significant distress and impaired functioning. So that's really what these next few slides are going to be about, is looking for signs that show that a person is experiencing this significant distress, where they can't cope with life, where they can't work, and where they can't give back to their community in any way. So I just want to point this out. Now, if you've ever taken any of my courses, I always mention the mental health continuum, because I think it's extremely important to know that just because you have an employee or you are a person that has a mental illness, it doesn't mean you have poor mental health, because it all depends on how we're coping with it. And so this slide is just really meant to show that a person can be diagnosed with chronic severe depression. They can be diagnosed with illnesses like bipolar and even schizophrenia. But if a person is receiving treatment and they have all the proper coping tools, is they can actually still have good mental health. Is also what's happening to many of us right now. We might never have been diagnosed with a mental illness, but because of all the major changes that have occurred, it's affecting our mental health. So it's just because our mental health has gotten a little bit lower, doesn't necessarily mean we have an illness. Just because somebody has an illness doesn't mean they have poor mental health. So in this next few slides, I always like to make a point. There are lots of mental illnesses out there. So please don't walk away from this little presentation and go home and diagnose everybody you know. So no diagnosing colleagues and friends and family, because there is lots of stuff out there. I'm just going to talk to you about the big two. So depression and anxiety, those are the big common ones, but there are lots of different mental illnesses. So I first of all want to start with anxiety and stress, because I think it's the most common. It's also the one that we are experiencing the most. So stress is a physiological response. It's our response to a threat. Anxiety is an emotion. It's an emotional response to the stress. So anxiety is feeling apprehensive and uneasy because of this threat that's present. Now, I like to show this graph because I like to show people that we do need some stress. Stress is important. A little bit of stress in our life motivates us to complete projects and do what we have to do. It's only when we experience too much stress that it can lead to breakdown, burnout, and actual anxiety disorders. So if you're feeling a little stressed right now, that's okay. That's healthy and that's normal. It's only when it persists for a long period of time that it starts to become an actual disorder. So here's the basic signs and symptoms of anxiety, things to look out for, and then I'm going to talk to you what it might look like during COVID. So it's excessive and inappropriate worry. It's experiencing difficulties concentrating on regular tasks, impatience, irritability, more anger, speeding or slowing of thoughts, feeling detached from oneself, and being easily tired. So those are the psychological symptoms. Now, physical symptoms this is relating to the fight or flight response. So when a threat is present, typically in human evolution, is we had to fight or flight from predators, and that was part of our survival. Now we fight and flight from things like deadlines and having too many emails and paying our bills. And so we have the same physiological response that our ancestors had, which means that when a stressor is present, our brain is going to try and help us by increasing our heart rate, so that we have more oxygen going to our muscles. It's going to make us breathe in more. It's going to send more signals up to our brain, so more oxygen gets to our brain, and it's going to help us respond. It's also going to shut down processes that we don't need, like our digestive system. We don't need to be digesting food when we're trying to run away from a saber-toothed tiger. So physiological responses that are a result from too much of this symptoms is that people with anxiety disorders experience things like heart palpitations, chest pain, rapid heartbeat, flushing because their heart's being overworked. The lungs are being overworked. So that's why you experience things like hyperventilation, shortness of breath. The brain is being fueled with too much oxygen. So that can cause symptoms like dizziness, constant headaches, excessive sweating, tingling and numbness in our hands and feet, our whole nervous system. And then finally, the gastrointestinal issues. So experiencing, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. And we've all felt that before when you felt a little nervous, is, even giving a presentation, is I can feel my stomach fluttering a little bit. And that is a perfectly healthy, normal response to a stressor. So how might this represent itself today during this COVID-19? Well, relating to the excessive, inappropriate worry, that could be a person watching too much news right now to the point of it disrupting time that they should be spent, cooking, cleaning, taking care of their children. Is overstocking food and supplies, leading to waste. That could be an example of excessiveness. Seeking out constant reassurance several times a day from external sources, whether that's the news or family and friends. Increased use of alcohol, tobacco, other drugs. Changes in sleeping and eating patterns. And not able to focus, just pay attention and concentrate on the day-to-day. So that's how it might represent now. But for when increased anger, agitation, short-temperedness. But how might it look returning to work? So that might be what people are experiencing at home. So look for things in yourself and your team. If you see an increase in irritability and anger in an employee that has never really experienced that before. Maybe they're complaining more about having low energy, poor physical health. They always also need excessive reassurance because they're always thinking the worst. Like every day, is this okay? Is this a good job? How's things going? Is everything going to be okay? And they constantly need that. Maybe they're having a hard time finishing their tasks, staying focused. They might have a hard time managing anything new. So with a lot of the changes that we're going to be implementing in our workplaces, they might have a very difficult time accepting these new challenges and these new changes as returning to work. So it might just require a little bit of extra assistance there. So now with depression's a little more severe than anxiety. The two tend to go together pretty well though. So you experience low mood or sadness. It's a loss of interest and enjoyment, decreased self-esteem, feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness. That could eventually lead to thoughts of suicide, disturbed sleep, loss of energy, reduced concentration and attention. And finally, the biggest physical symptom of depression is unexplained aches and pains, particularly in the lower back. So we tend to carry a lot of our mental health in our physical body. And unfortunately, that's where this tends to manifest itself. So what should you look for during COVID-19? It's a lot of very similar things that I just said, is you might see a loss of interest or enjoyment in their previously enjoyed activities. Now, I know we can't do a lot of our previously enjoyed activities However, if they were a typical outdoorsy person, we can still go outside, we can still go for walks, we can still garden. And you're noticing that they just don't want to go outside, is they just don't want to leave the house. Sleeping too much or too little, excessive moodiness, self-criticism is saying a lot of negative thoughts about themselves, body aches and pains, as I mentioned, the lower back, and in worst case, the suicidal thoughts. So what should you look for your employees coming back to work, either in them or in themselves? Is you might see them start crying, is look for increased emotions, being tearful, is social withdrawal, conflict from coworkers. They usually hang out with everyone and now they're isolating themselves more. You're seeing an increase in sick days, appear tired and slow during most tasks. They look confused at times, have a hard time making decisions, making mistakes, lagging behind, increased conversations about their problems at work, and alcohol or drug abuse. So those are the signs and symptoms to look out for. And I always like, having the neuroscience background, I always like to point out that is we are all at risk because we all have one of these. And everything about our behavior and the things that we're doing and these thoughts, they're all located in different parts of our brain. And that's why is we really have to look out for different symptoms in different people. We all have a different brain, and the way our brain processes things isn't going to be uniformly the same for everyone. So you're really looking for changes in people. And when you see these changes in people, is we really need them to get professional treatment, because 80 to 90% of people will respond very well to treatment, but unfortunately only about half of people will actually seek it out. And if we don't seek it out, things can get worse. So treatment is going to be a combination, and everyone's different. So everyone will respond to different types of treatment, but it's usually a combination of medication, therapy, self-help strategies, and naturopathic medicine. So it's going to be a combination of the above. So I just want to go very briefly through a couple other things before I pass it over to Angelique to talk about the self-care. But our action plan is going to be slightly different. Now, this is something that I would go through in some of our other training. So at this point, I'm just going to go through briefly, but if you do want to know more about this, is we have additional training that walks people through this action plan on what to do. So today I just wanted to give you more the signs and symptoms. But we go through actions of in a crisis, how to call 911, is make sure to call immediately. If you don't feel comfortable calling 911, there's suicide hotline preventions as well. So if you think there's any form of immediate harm, we always want to reach out to 911 or a crisis hotline. But in a non-crisis is through our other training. The other trainings that I offer is it teaches people how to engage in a proper conversation, how to talk to them when you start noticing these symptoms, is how do we listen with empathy? How can you provide information about professional resources? So how do you plan having that conversation with an employee or a family member or friend? And then suggesting self-care strategies, which I'll pass over to Angelique. But I just wanted to provide a little bit of information here. Is providing information is very different from giving advice. Is we don't want to give advice to a person what they should do. We just want to give them the tools that can help them. And so it's a difference between, you know, you should call this or you should do this, is give them some information. Things like Bounce Back Ontario, started with Canadian Mental Health Association, is a great resource for people in Ontario that is providing online tools, is providing ways to support assistance. Get Maple this is where you can actually talk to a medical doctor online. I believe it's about $50 a session, and you can actually seek support. And they can also, I think right now though, they might be offering some services for free during COVID-19. So something to check out. Now, if your workplace does have an employee assistance program, I highly encourage you to recommend what sort of services they have. Give the person a brochure, give them some information. Something Ontario Shores has just started. We are now all of a sudden, we just recently started this healthcare worker assist program and first responder assist programs. So for anyone that works in either of these, it can teach people how to system navigate. There's individual therapy, phone counseling, and even referrals to our prompt care clinic. So that is pretty much what I have for my portion here. I'm going to pass it over to Angelique. That was just to give you again some tools and different support there.
Right.
So Angelique, I'll pass it over to you to talk about the self-care stuff.
All right, so let me get in here. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, so thanks so much, Christina. So I wanted to talk a little bit about self-care. I actually want to, we'll be giving you some practical strategies, but I thought it'd be really important to kind of speak a little bit about what self-care is, because it's very subjective. And as in regards to mental health, and mental illness has a lot of stigma, so does self-care. So a lot of times self-care seems as selfish, and many people tend to say, okay, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, and then I'll do my self-care. Then I'll practice my self-care. And many times that time never really comes. And so it's kind of pushed aside. Okay. So self-care is also alert, purposeful, and continuous way of being, right? So it's important in regards to not only how we've learned it from our parents and our family members, is actually in regard to now, what is, if you have young children at home or children at home, adolescents, what are they seeing, right? Also in regards to your partner could be seeing something in regards to you and want to then practice self-care. So it's alert behavior. It's not something that people just kind of always know, and it's continuous. So a lot of times that's another myth in regards to, okay, when I have a life pain, that's when I'll practice my self-care. Self-care is really a way of being. It's a lifestyle, and the way that we can do it is by in regards to finding ways that it's sustainable. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about that. It also involves action and attitude. So a lot of times we know what to do intellectually, but then we don't actually follow through. So self-care is definitely an action. Okay. So just to continue on in regards to what Christina was talking about from anxiety and depression, trauma is another situation that we definitely cannot ignore, right? There's many different definitions for trauma, but this one really resonated with me. It violates in regards to familiar ideas and expectations about the world, an individual, or society. I'm just going to move this here so I can actually, oh, I can't. Okay, into a state of extreme confusion and uncertainty. And I feel that the word for plunging for me really resonates for me, because from speaking with a lot of people and supporting people, that's how they kind of described how pandemic has been. It's that they were kind of just thrown into it. There was no room in regards to prep, right, or nothing. So they really feel plunged and they feel really lost. So with trauma, how can it be presented? So you can have physical symptoms similar to how the depression can be showing in the body, right? Discomfort in various parts of your body. It can be psychological. It alters the way that we process information, right? And that comes in regards to the fact that we might be that whole foggy mind in regards to how things can be, okay? Socially, it can become more withdrawn. You can feel more irritated. So you might be seeing more signs of frustration. Your tolerance for things are just a lot lower, right? Vocationally, it creates barriers to work, right? Both in regards to obligations, expectations, and duties. And energetic. So when I say bilateral flow, so with trauma, there's a theory under energy psychology that when we have an emotion or we have an experience that's not processed, or perhaps we minimized it, right? So we think, this pandemic, we're gonna get through this, or perhaps it was something historically, right, that you haven't processed. Our energy always naturally wants to kind of flow bilaterally, kind of like our DNA, right? It just kind of came going. So for example, our right nostril, when you breathe into it, is responsible for our left hemisphere of our brain. And when we breathe into our left, it's stimulating the right hemisphere of our brain. And it's similar in regards to throughout. So when we have like a unilateral flow, different things manifest. You might feel very fatigued because it's not the way the body's normal state wants to be. And that's an example in regards to it. So you might just show that it manifests in regards to being very lethargic, for an example, right? And then there's the cognitive. So it impacts our cognitions, the way that we view the world, how we view ourselves, how we view our relationships, okay, in regards to that. So self-care is at its best when, and no, it's not when we're kissing the mirror, but it's in regards to having that self-compassion, okay? So it can show, we can do that in very little ways in regards to, for example, really having a mindset that what we do for ourselves is important, because then it impacts how we then care and show love for other people, okay? It incorporates a multi-level approach, it's very holistic. So it's not only a physical piece, maybe we go to the gym, but what is it that you're doing for your spiritual health? What is it that you're doing in regards to your emotional health, right? And it complements existing routines. So it's about tapping it in to different parts that you're already doing so that you can continue on practicing things that you know that serve you. Okay, and we're going to be seeing what some possibilities can be. So some of you may be familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in a nutshell, it is talking about in regards to, we all want to go to self-actualization. That's kind of everyone wants to get to that spot, right? But there's particular phases or layers that we need, right, in regards to motivations. And I believe in regards to when you look at the 3 lower elements in regards to physiological, safety, and love and belonging, when it comes to this pandemic, when it comes to trauma, it has impacted those areas. And so therefore, our self-care now for employees to be really focusing on, as well as for when we're transitioning back into the working spaces, need to focus on that. There's self-care that also relates to the other 2, but the lower 3 is where I want to put our focus, right? Because similar to how we were kind of thrust into this moment, what we don't want is to the transition going back into work to have that similar feeling of not feeling prepared. Okay, so what we do now will impact the transition. So this is a blow up of the 3 lower levels on that Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So the physiological pieces of it is when we're talking in regards to our sleep, and that is huge. So for example, people might be saying, okay, yeah, I'm so exhausted, I just fall off to sleep. So it's not about the falling off to sleep. It's about, are you having interruptions in your sleep? It's also in regards to the fact, what is the quality of your sleep? Are you getting into your REM stages of sleep so that you feel when you wake up, you feel fresh, okay? So for supporting purposes, for this can be, I have here in regards to leaders and managers, but this can also be support for your partner, it can be support for your children, support for yourself, right? There's breathing techniques that you can do that specifically highlight your sleeping, as well as specific foods that can be impacting your ability to have good quality sleep. So those are some of the approaches as an example. Safety, I think we can all relate that our safety has felt threatened in some capacity, okay? So it's about asking not only the employees or your coworkers, it's about asking about their family members, which I think will come naturally in many cases, but in some cases, everyone is feeling stressed. They might kind of lose focus in regards to that, the importance of this, right? Validating and showing empathy, what Christina had mentioned before. And I wanted to also mention in regards to the talk therapy. So Christina had mentioned one of the resources is in regards to AAP, which is a wonderful resource, but talk therapy is not for everybody in all cases, right? For many different reasons. So it could be personality, it could be in regards to past experience, it could be culturally for cultural reasons, right? It's kind of like a taboo to kind of talk. So this is why having other alternative ways to gather self-care and practice self-care is really important. So movement, bodies, this is where I'm a big advocate in regards to yoga, right? And it's one of the reasons why I went to get my certification in yoga, is because I knew that it would be important for the people that I serve to help with mental health, right? Also in regards to grounding practices, somatic focus. So this is where the energy psychology comes in, right? And to kind of regulate your emotions and burning out. So really promoting that would be a really good thing that I would suggest. And then in the phases of loving belonging, it's about perhaps a self-care accountability partner. Similar to when going to the gym, it's just nice to have someone say, hey, do you want to go? Or did you go today? Just kind of a friendly check-in. So maybe kind of somehow cultivating that. Encouraging strategies that develop self-compassion, so a lot of forgiveness and guilt. This is a huge theme that I'm seeing when people I'm supporting, is the amount of guilt that people are feeling in regards to that they feel they're not being as productive as they should be when they're working at home, or how they're managing the juggles of being a parent and working. So really being able to support teams in regards to that is really huge. That we need to be able to lean on each other more than ever now in regards to this. And acknowledging wins. Because if our cognitions are distorted and we're having a lot of negative self-talk, we may not find the wins. We might not even see the wins. So having someone to kind of acknowledge, even if it's a small win, it's a shift, to kind of acknowledge that would be really important. So tips to consider as we move forward. So continue with the active listening, but also include mindful listening. So if you can imagine for a moment, you have somebody who is having symptoms where their memory is impacted and they're needing that reassurance all the time, right? That may trigger something in you when you're trying to support or have a conversation with somebody, right? Be mindful of that, right? We all have biases, myself included, right? It's about being aware of it and then being able to shift that and do it in a way that's non-judgmental to the person and also mainly in regards to yourself, right? It's about being able to find ways that you can sit with discomfort and know that what you're feeling is going to pass, but still be present, okay? Suggest teams to add a self-care practice. So for example, promoting a 5-minute deep abdominal breath before turning on the computer, right? Before you get bombarded with all the emails and all the things that you need to do, right? Maybe perhaps have a muscle relaxation during the end of a virtual meeting, or when, if you're back at work already, or when it's time for you to transition back after meetings when you're live at the workplace, right? And doing that now will cultivate that culture for when the transition happens. Checking in how employees and our colleagues unplug from work so they know it's an expectation and that you really invite it. And then model your own feelings, right? A lot of the times we feel that as leaders that we have to, be strong. It's okay to have emotions, but it's also, you can role model showing them how you move through it, okay? And then the last one is having a long-term commitment to resources. So this is wonderful that so many people were interested in the organizations are offering this to their employees, but it's also about that sustainability. So, okay, so this piece now it's in regards to, okay, how can you help them learn other ones? So other webinars, other resources, whatever it may be, it's consistent, right? Because they have the positive brand. Tips to prevent burnout is to add an out of office reply during certain hours of the day so that you can do some self-care. Fake a commute. So we've had that commute piece. If we don't have that, if we're working at home, to kind of fake it so you can transition from our roles. Remind yourself that it's not time for busy work, but essential. It's not time for busy work, but essential work. Okay. And keep in mind, there was a research that I had found that I thought was really interesting, that the research shows that there is an average of 3 hours that we're productive, right? Because we have a lot of disruptions and interruptions, maybe different from when we're in the office versus at home. But then when we're at home, we tend to not give ourselves permission to be distracted, right? And we feel that we have to work the 7 hours. So it's really to just be mindful and aware of that. And then have mindful breaks. So the breath can help us to be mindful. We're not going to go through all of these 3, but I will be going into some techniques right now. But I just wanted to show that the breath can help with, if you have sleep disturbances, if you're noticing that you're having a lot of racing thoughts, the breath can help to calm down, but also the breath can help in regards to lifting your energy if you're really fatigued. It can help with anger. There's specific breaths in regards to that. There's certain breaths for concentration. So pretty much all of the symptoms that we are talking about for anxiety, depression, and trauma, the breath can focus, depending on what breath it is, to help to kind of alleviate some of those symptoms. Okay, and then cross-lateral. So I'm going to teach you a few techniques. So I wanted to just have you right now to kind of where you are at, just sit on the edge of your chair and have your feet grounded into the ground. So the soles of your feet, okay? And this is pretty much for, you could be doing, if you're still working at home, get into the practice. This can be if you're sitting, if your job involves you doing a lot of sitting at your desk. It can also be for those who, for example, if your job consists of standing, right? Take your breath and notice in regards to how you're breathing. So our breath can tap into that rest and repair. So the opposite of that fight and flight, our self-care needs to allow us to tap into our parasympathetic. So in regards to that whole rest and repair. So if you can just take your one hand on your stomach and the other hand on your chest, and you just take a deep breath in. And I want you to try and focus that your left hand is going to kind of extend out. So you're kind of doing a big abdominal breath. So you take a deep breath in. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, that is best, because it just kind of takes out any of external stimuli. Right? If closing your eyes doesn't feel right to you, that's completely fine. Right? But just notice how it feels in your body for a moment. And notice any resistance that comes up for you right now if you're not wanting to do it. That's really, it tells a lot too. Right? So take a nice big deep breath in through your nose for 1, 2, 3, and then releasing it for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in again. And then letting that go. I want you to continue doing that. You can keep your hand on your body. Sometimes that really does help to ground, or you can have your hands on your lap. And as you're doing that, I want you to put your attention to the back part of your tongue and see if you can still your tongue. And as you're breathing nice and slow with your exhalations being much longer than your inhalations, I want to explain to you why your tongue movement's important in regards to decreasing stress, anxiety, nervousness. So we have, with our automatic thoughts, our tongue rapidly moves without us even being aware of it. So if we can still our tongue, it helps to slow down our thoughts. You might make it go away completely, but you'll notice that it will slowly start to slow down if you give it time. So take a deep breath in again and exhale out. And another one I want you to try is I want you to just raise all your toes off of the floor, pushing into your heels and the mid part of your foot. And as you exhale, slowly start to place your baby toe down, then your next toe, not holding your breath at all. Your following toe, all the way until you get to your big toe. Just once again, check in on your breath and notice if it's changed, if it went shallow again, if your thoughts wandered, and if it did, try not to get frustrated. There's no judgment, just come right back to here and now. Relaxing your tongue, relaxing your toes. Okay. So I want you to just rub your hands together now, your palms. And I want you to open your eyes if your eyes were closed. And we're going to go through a cross lateral technique. So I think I just shared with you in regards to the fact that sometimes our energies get stuck or sluggish. And this is technique I got from one of my readings. I wish I can find the book again to share with you. If I do, I will share it. I can't remember, but I just want to indicate this is not for me. It's within the literature, okay? So what it is that we're going to be placing our two fingers right in the middle part of our eye. So some people will say it's our energy center, it's our third eye. And once again, you're going to be just taking a deep breath in. You're going to be tracing around your eye. It's like a figure 8. Coming down to the opposite side. Okay? And you're breathing in when you're going up and exhaling when you're under. And if you can close your eyes and connect your body with your breath, relaxing your arm, relaxing your tongue still, putting just the right of pressure that you need. And releasing. And you have to remember that these are just being shown as an introduction. These require time, and it's why it's called a practice. Hold it right there and right in the middle for a second and release your hand. And just once again, check into your body. Check into your heartbeat. Notice if your breathing has slowed down a bit. And it's these small little moments that you make throughout the day, right? You can do that in the car, because for some people, they wouldn't feel comfortable doing that in the workplace, right? You could do that in the car, right? You can do that in a private place in your workplace. You can do that after work, transitioning, going back home, right? So there's so many different times. You've got to figure out when is the right place and time for you to create that time so that you can reap the benefits of it. So like I was saying, it's a practice. It's something you have to kind of do ongoing in order to get the benefits and feel the real benefits, okay? I'm thinking in regards to time. Oh, one last thing I do really want to share with you at the time is going and drinking water is a subtle way, but it's one of the easiest ways that you can put a little bit of mindfulness in your day. So instead of going to work and just drinking the warm water, right? And just drinking and that's it, drink it slowly and be very mindful of the process. And the reason why mindfulness now is becoming so important is because our thoughts are always thinking about what we have to do thinking and judging what things has happened in the past, and we're hardly ever in the moment to really just connect with the moment and put things in perspective and know that things will pass, so that we can take that next challenge when that next stressful situation comes, so we don't get burnout or compassion fatigue. Okay? So please stay inspired, just stay connected. Every month I offer a wellness newsletter, so feel free to subscribe, and would be happy to share the information with you. And it's back to you, Christina. Do you want me to do this particular screen? Okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
So
yeah, if you like this webinar, as myself and Angelique, this was just a portion of a couple of the ones that we offer. So usually like myself or Angelique will do a full 1 to 2 hours, and these are just some of the things that we do offer. Mental health first aid is actually a certification course. It's a 2-day training course. That's the majority of my work, what I do, but it's an amazing course that's just meant to be like standard first aid. Unfortunately, we can't offer it online. All the other ones that you're seeing there are all available online for anyone that would like to bring it into their organization. So you can contact me, which I think is on the next slide. So for anybody that would like to, there's my contact info, and you can read more about it as well.
All right, so, thank you, everyone.
So hopefully you have some questions.
I was going to say we could use the chat function if people want to ask a question. It shows up to all of the panelists, and so we can present it there. Sorry, I should probably introduce myself. My name is Shannon Stewart. I'm the CEO of the Ontario Doors Foundation, and it's been my pleasure to kind of join you all this afternoon on this incredible workshop. I'm going to be doing much more deep breathing, because as I watched that list that Christina had, if you were to look at it and review it yourself, it would be interesting to look at how do you rank yourself on some of the symptoms and things that are presented, and how do your, I don't know, significant other, your children, how do they rank how you're doing on those? I know that irritability might be something that I'd be displaying lately. I don't know, maybe not. So I'm just looking in the chat to see if anything's presented. There's a few comments saying, thank you so much, love the webinar, thank you for sharing. Speaking of, we have recorded the webinar, as I think we mentioned at the beginning. I know that, you know, in an effort to ensure that we represented your time well, that some of the slides were moved through quickly. So if you were trying to take notes, fret not. The information will be sent to you with a link to the recording. There was a question, Angelique, what is your website again? Can you please state that again?
Yeah, sure. It's www.nurturingourwellbeing.com.
Perfect. And again, that will be on the slides that get presented. We'll also be sending you a little bit of a survey, just because we'd love to get your feedback on, you know, was this helpful? Is this a good format? Yes, we will be able to rewatch the webinar. We'll try to send you a link. And if we can't send the link, this will be our first time that we've actually tried to disseminate it. We'll make sure that we actually send you a link to our YouTube channel, which is where we post it. We can post it afterwards, but we'll make sure that you have access to the information. Someone just posted a question. Sorry, I'm just going through this. This is feeling very talk show. I'm enjoying it too much. People have been disconnected from colleagues for a long time. How should they reconnect when they get back into the workplace?
Great question. Angelique, did you want to?
I think starting off in regards to finding out where people are at, right? Where people are at, so that they kind of know that you're accessible to them to hear, as long as you're ready to hear that and you're ready to kind of share. I think everyone would be very happy to kind of share, or wanting to kind of share. But once again, I have to say that also being mindful in regards to protecting yourself and in regards to the information that you're getting. But I would say doing things together. Like what did you do? How did you connect previously, right? How did you connect previously, and kind of tapping in regards to that. And I mean, and maybe it will be in regards to the fact of doing a self-care strategy together with them might be a really, really nice way to connect, because then your relationship would shift to more one of being even more of a deeper support for each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything else to add for that, Christina.
No, I think that was great. I know something that we've been doing a lot on our team to kind of transition us back is we have regular meetings through Zoom. So we meet Monday morning, Thursday morning, and then Friday afternoon at lunch. So that this way it's not going to be such a shock when we're all back together, because we're still all communicating with each other like 3 times a week. So if you haven't been doing those things, I would highly suggest, is just have a lunch meeting. Like, it doesn't even always have to be at work. Like today I missed our lunch meeting because I'm here doing this, but like we play games. We were doing like a version of Connect 4. So
I think people are looking for validation that they're not alone in feeling what they're feeling. And so there's okay for that conversation, but shift it onto something else too. It's more helpful.
Thank you both. Another few questions here. Someone asked, are the symptoms the same with children?
I'll start with that one, and then Angelique, if you want to add. Some of the symptoms can be the same, but children do exhibit different tendencies when it comes to exhibiting mental health. So with children, you will tend to see, like, you'll still see the withdrawal, but you might actually even see like defiant behavior in some cases. So more acting out than they usually would. Something you see with teenagers that you don't generally see with adults is teenagers tend to exhibit more self-harm behavior. Adults self-harm with drugs and alcohol. So that's why you don't really see it as much in adults, but children, you will see slight differences. It's really hard to diagnose mental illnesses in children and young adults because their brain isn't fully developed. So I will say just to have some patience for sure, more with children and young adults, because it does take some time to see a proper diagnosis. But similar to adults, look for changes in their behavior. If you're noticing drastic changes in their behavior that's affecting their life with their friends and their family and their school, then definitely. But there are some slight differences for sure.
And one thing I guess I would add, because I totally agree with you, Christina, especially with the piece about the acting out and the frustration and the anger for the adolescent population, but for the younger children, look in regards to attachment, because you might see a shift in regards to how they're now, they're attaching to you more, they're wanting more touching, they want more hugging, they need more reassuring. Like you might see that a lot differently too, for the younger children, because they can't articulate, they're aware that something is different, that they're feeling something different, but they can't verbalize it. And sometimes as adults, we can't verbalize it. So just imagine for a young child, they can't, unable to. Yeah.
Good question.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Another question, how would you approach an employer who actually feels you should be working harder and longer because you're working from home?
I've heard this one a couple times already, actually, and it's really tough because everybody's approaching this differently. Some people are feeling better working from home and they're able to do more, and then there's other of us where we're struggling. I think it's one of those things where it just really does require some honest dialogue, both with the employee and the manager, and as an employee, is just be upfront and talk to your manager. I am having a difficult time with this. These are my boundaries. Here's my limits of what I can do right now based on this current situation. And I think really stating our needs and what we need in this moment, and asking for some flexibility. Because if any of you are parents, it's difficult to be juggling all of this. And so I think employers need to hear your limits and your boundaries, because they might be in a different situation. They might not have children. They might be expecting this too, because maybe from their end, maybe they're experiencing such isolation and loneliness that they're putting all of their efforts into work, and they're expecting the same thing from you. So remember, we don't know what's on their side as well. So I think it's one of those is just state exactly what's happening with you, have good, honest dialogue, and try and cope with it in that way. Mm-hmm. It's a good question.
Excellent. And I guess the only thing I would add in regards to that is, if you can, and this is where though that mindfulness piece comes in, because it will be an uncomfortable conversation. So if you kind of set yourself up to kind of be able to articulate and explain your point as calmly as possible, so that the open dialogue can take place. But it's to find out what is he or she wanting, like what is it the expectation, because then you'll be clearly be able to see, okay, this is what you're wanting. Okay, this is not possible for me right now, or it is possible for me right now. I can't do this, but I can do that. So it's kind of what the boundaries that Christina is saying, but you won't be able to really identify that or list that if you're not clear in regards to what they're wanting. And I think if you kind of also include it, it shows that their voice, what they're wanting, is also being heard and taken into consideration. So I think it's like a two-way, because they do it, then they might kind of relax a little bit enough to hear what you're trying to say, which is so important because it's lived experience. If you don't have young children at home, you're not going to understand the complexities of juggling the working and having children at home, right? So it's just about that compassion for both, building both. So hear their needs too, so that they'll be able to hear your needs.
That's great, thank you. We still have a couple more questions. I'm just mindful of the time at 12:54. I'm the supervisor of a child care center. When we eventually reopen, do you have any advice on how to motivate staff who might be hesitant to return?
You want to start that one, Angelique? Go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So hesitant to return. I'm always wanting to, in regards to what is the root for that. Like, what is the reason the hesitation? Is it because of fear of a second wave of the pandemic, or is it in regards to the feel that they're not going to be able to cope? Is it for emotional and mental health reasons? Like, what's the reason why they're hesitant, right? And really hearing their voice and catching that, because not until they know that you are trying to understand them, or you understand that they're going to be able to open up and kind of be fluid with you in regards to, okay, I need to get back. He or she's expecting this of me. They've heard my point. This is fair. I think a lot of times in this pandemic, we feel that some people are angry because they feel it's been unfair, right? All of these things happen is unfair. So I think if we kind of started with that kind of investigation, that type of curiosity, it may really help to guide what you can do and what would be needed in place to help them to get there, to figure out what is needed to support them to get there. The ultimate outcome is to get there, but it's in regards to what's all the steps prior to that. And I think it starts with finding out what is their concern.
Thanks, Angelique. I totally agree. And another thing I read too in this pandemic is to really tell your staff beforehand, send out emails, send out, photos of all the precautions that you're taking to keep people safe. So if you've added new procedures in place, make sure that they're aware of it before coming back to work. Is really keeping staff informed as much as you can as to all the changes you're making to keep them safe, and new procedures and practices.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. We've had two questions asking if certificates are available for the webinar. Is this something that has a certificate receipt on the end? I just wanted to make sure that was addressed.
Not this one. All of our webinars, it's not certification. The only certification course that I currently offer, that we offer, is the mental health first aid certificate. And I did notice that somebody did post that on Coursera. Emergency first aid is being offered. That's great. I think that's a little bit different than mental health first aid, but you know what? It's awesome if you can find more free courses and things like that. That's a great tool. So this one's not certified though.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to be sure. Thank you. And then maybe one last question before we wrap up. So the comment is that isolating has removed many external stimuli. In some ways, it's made things simpler. And do you expect returning to work and to other aspects of normal life to actually increase stress for some people now?
Do you want to go, Christina, or you want me to go?
You know what? How about you go? You're really good at the stress stuff.
Okay, ask the question. Can you give me the question again one more time?
Absolutely. Isolating has removed many external stimuli. In some ways, it's made things simpler. Do you expect returning to work and to other aspects of normal life to actually increase stress for some people?
Yeah, definitely. I do think that it will increase stress for some people. Also, depending on how their thoughts and views in regards to being around people. Does that make sense? So for example, going to the grocery store right now, for some people, before it was nothing, but now it's just the idea of seeing people in masks, seeing people with gloves on. It's a trigger for people. So once again, it stimulates the sympathetic nervous system when they start to get really nervous, and a lot of anxiety and stuff like that. So definitely depends on where you are, what's your belief and your understanding in regards to the pandemic. Also, what are the supports and the layout in the workplace, right? What are the unknowns about the workplace setup And what about the unknowns in regards to the whole pandemic that's still in your mind, that's going to be impacting your threshold for any type of external things coming your way. So definitely, I do feel that for some people, it will heighten and increase it. And that is a concern, right? That's why they're saying they feel that issues in regards to mental health, they're going to see a rise of it in regards to this new norm, in regards to transitioning back. So people need to really get grounded into their self-care practice so they can be best positioned and best prepared for when they are triggered and experiencing that. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. That's great. We do have one more question, but just since it's 12:59, I want to be respectful of people's time. If Angelique and Christina, if you don't mind staying on an extra couple of minutes to potentially answer this question, but I do want to take the opportunity before we hit that 1 o'clock magic hour. Thank you both so much for your time today. To thank everyone who joined us for taking the time out of whatever your schedule looks like these days for being with us. Ontario Shores, as Christina and Angelique have both mentioned, is one of the 4 subspecialty mental health hospitals. We are, working really hard to do everything we can in anticipation of the mental health challenges that are going to continue throughout the pandemic. And so we'd encourage you, this is my shameless plug, that if you've enjoyed the webinar today, to please consider making a donation to support the work, to ensure that places like Ontario Shores can be there for people who need us when those symptoms of anxiety and depression move beyond what they can handle on their own. So very simply, if you go to ontarioshores.ca/donate, you can make your donation online. Very, very simple. And as an added bonus, right now, Canada Helps, which is the online portal that we use, for every dollar donated in June, that's a chance for us to win $20,000, which could be put to use for more of these webinars for a lot of the things that are being done here on Ontario Shores. So ontarioshores.ca/donate. We'd be so appreciative. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will stay on for the next few minutes, but if you need to leave, we totally understand. Have a wonderful day. I hope it's sunny where you are. It's sunny here on at Ontario Shores. And I'll now go back to the last question that we have so far.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the questions that we have here is a supervisor of a child care center. When my staff normally work as teams with larger groups of children, how do I support them as they may be now isolated to one room with minimal ratios and unable to socialize and collaborate as much with other staff members? And I kind of assume that this could be translated into a lot of workplaces now. People just won't go back to normal and they won't be around the same people. So any advice in this scenario?
I think this one, it really goes to a lot of what Angelique spoke to. I think this is really because we're going to have still isolation, like we're still isolated at home in our work environment, most of us right now. And even when we return to work, there's going to be isolated. I think it's really important to continue to promote self-care for people and is making sure that they are taking the time off they need, that they are exercising, that they are doing these deep breathing techniques, that they're, mindful of the situation. But if you can, I would still use these online support systems as having staff meetings online to still be able to communicate with each other, even though it's not ideal. If you have staff meetings, still have those little lunch meetings or staff meetings afterwards with your workers. So if they can't see each other in person, they can still communicate with each other and ask questions about how to best support the children. So use the resources that we have to still try and keep it, is communication open. So.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm just looking and I don't think we have any, oh wait, one new message. Oh, it's a thank you message, so that's fine. I hope you enjoyed it. Just another comment too from someone, it's not a question, but I just did want to kind of pass it along. It says, I know the webinar was titled Strategies for Returning to Work, but there have been some fabulous strategies for maintaining good mental health while at home and isolated from the outside general world, particularly for those of us who have no set timeline for return to the workplace and are working at home indefinitely. Thank you. And I think there's a lot of that uncertainty too, where people just have no set timeline. Some people have been told maybe 2021, and it's one thing to contemplate returning to work and it's another to contemplate not having any idea when that might be.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely.
That unknown and the discomfort that comes with the unknown, and sitting in limbo is like, yeah, it's a horrible feeling. But I'm glad that from what I got from that is that they felt that the skills can be transferable for that, and I think that they really can be, right? It allows you to kind of sit with all of those uncomfortable sensations, turn the thoughts off or slow them down a little bit. So that's good. It only works if it's practiced.
Absolutely.
Let's just say,
Yes.
let's hope it's not 2021. I know I'm one of those ones, like, I want to come back. I'm the opposite. I'm stressed staying at home. I am so excited to come back to Ontario Shores and see all my colleagues again. Is as much as the Zoom meetings are helping and it keeps us in touch, it's like I still miss them all and can't wait to actually see them in person.
Yeah, very true.
So some of us might not feel stressed. We might feel excited.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then it's just a mix of everyone who comes back, right? You've got angry and happy and, you know, trying to figure out who's where on the spectrum and how to best interact. So
for sure.
Thank you again, everyone. I think that's the end of our questions. We're now at 1:04. You know, delighted that we still have a great number of people with us, but if that's, I don't see any other questions. Did you have any final comments or anything that either of you wanted to make, or?
I think that's great. Yeah. But again, if you are interested, we have more. And yeah, the foundation does some awesome work too. So I got to say thank you both for having us.
For the opportunity. It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Definitely
really
donate. Because you guys are awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Hope you both have a great day.
Thank you.
And lots of, you know, good deep breaths and practice great self-care and take care of yourselves and each other.
Right.